At this point, we were dead.
One more time. One more time.
Well, everybody's looking, so I feel weird.
Thank you for being here, Anna.
Welcome to Lit Up for this week. We have Anna Kendrick, the Academy Award nominated actress and star of Up in the Air and Pitch Perfect. Today we are here to talk about her memoir, Scrappy Little Nobody. I was lucky enough to interview Anna at Barnes & Noble at Union Square in New York a few weeks ago, and we're so pleased to be able to share this with you. I hope you enjoy it. We had a lot of fun up there together, and I can't wait for Anna's next book.
Here she is. Woo! Okay, so one of the last sentences in your book is, I will try to be open and not squirrely.
Yeah. I appreciate you fighting your own accent for that, to give me the R in squirrely.
Oh, squirrely. So I'm challenging you, let's be open and not squirrely.
I don't want to.
Okay, so your book is Scrappy Little Nobody. And I know that we kind of just had a chat just there about like, wait, everyone tells me I'm somebody now. And you're like, that's not the point.
I know. I'm just throwing people under the bus. But yeah, I was back there because I think a lot of people have sort of said since the book came out, because they're trying to be cute, like, but you're somebody now. And that's not the point. The whole point is I was always somebody, or I'm still nobody, or whichever, but like that you get to be the same person and have the same qualities that you've had your whole life. And that's kind of something that I think is great because I feel like I've gotten like more and more useless as I've gotten older, and like knowing that I'm still like the little tiny squirrely fighter that I was when I was like 3 years old kind of gives me this confidence. The confidence to wear pajamas and pretend it's fashion.
Wait, there's a great picture in the book of you, like the 3-year-old you that is that little fighter.
Yeah.
And, like, is it true that like when you're a bit down and you're like, you look at that picture and you're like, come on, girl, like get out there and fight.
I know, yeah, I found that, and I ended up framing it in my office because it's kind of nice to know that like just all those qualities are still in there, and that like I think because I was small, like I have tried to like fight to assert myself in my space in the world, and that like I've been able to do that before, so I can do it again. It's like in Harry Potter when he goes back in time and he knows that he can produce the Patronus because he already did it, Thanks, guys.
So, okay, so being small, we'll start there and then we're just going to let that go. But there is a great line in the book, and it was one thing to be a chihuahua in a group of Labradors. It was quite another to be the hamster. Oh, but I'm wondering, like, you talk about being this little fighter. How do you think that helped define your identity, and how has that helped you kind of push through?
I think, yeah, once I figured out pretty young that, like, physically I was different, and, that I was always going to be kind of the shortest in any group, I think it did kind of help me. I can't tell if I like cultivated this or if it, is just like the instrument I was born with. That sounds so pretentious, but I sing loud. Like I sing, too loud. Like usually I have to get asked to step away from the microphone when I'm recording anything, and I think that it is interesting to me that I've played a lot of really strong characters who like speak their mind, or at least if I start out playing a meek character, there's like a shift by the end, and so I think that it has certainly like colored my performing career in that way. Like just knowing that like I need to kind of talk louder to be heard, I guess.
Yeah.
Proverbially.
Okay, so we're in New York, and one of the stories I love most in the book is when you come here with your brother, Mike.
Yeah.
And now I don't know if there are parents, or I don't know if children were allowed in the audience, but I feel like the story of your like crazy weekend in New York, coming for an audition for high society, will make parents freak out and young kids like give them a dream to strive for.
Well, it's weird because like, telling this story in Indiana might make people feel that way, but in New York, maybe not, because you guys are like, yeah, there are kids in New York. Like, what's the problem? But when...
Yeah, but not 12-year-olds staying in hotels by themselves.
Maybe not. But yeah, our parents, they knew us, and they knew, like, that we would be at least mildly responsible. So that we had this sneaky plan to, like, for my brother and me to sneak into a hotel by saying, like, our parents were coming later, like we were their, like, bellboys or something. I don't know what the plan was. And we were supposed to just stay in the hotel and go to the audition and come back, but we, like, went and had pancakes in the Village, which was the only neighborhood that we knew by name. And thought that we were being, like, so rebellious and cool, but we were just having brunch, so actually not a big deal.
But wait, they asked you to come back, and it meant you had to stay another night and another night. And, like, you were just a kid with, like, one change of underwear.
Yeah.
And what happened when this nice casting agent was like, honey, when you come back, can you dress up a bit?
I know. That was, I think I didn't really feel embarrassed about that at the time, but like, looking back, I'm like, oh, I think she was, like, trying to be really sensitive to it, because I had worn, like, combat boots and, like, boot-cut jeans and, like, thought I looked great, but I was supposed to be playing, like, the daughter of, like, a socialite in the 30s, so they asked me if I could, like, wear something nicer, and I went to we didn't have a credit card, and we were running out of cash because of our brunch. So we went to Payless and got, like, some strappy church sandals for me. And I just wore them with the exact same outfit, like, with the bootcut jeans and the, like, tatty sweater, and was like, see, I look nice now. What do you want?
Wait, so you got the role, and that really changed your family dynamic, right? Like, you and your dad had to move to New York.
Yeah.
What was that like for you two?
I mean, I thought it was really cool. I think he had a good time too, because we like, went to museums, and he took me to the UN and stuff. I mean, he thought that was cool. I didn't think that was that cool at 12. I'll be honest. And I remember that time really fondly, but I definitely remember my mom coming down to visit on weekends, and she would try to come, like, every other weekend, and I can't remember if this is in the book or not, but I remember by the end of each weekend that she would visit, I would, like, try to pick a fight with her, and it was one of those, like, total, like, psychology 101 things where I was, like, just trying to make it easier to say goodbye at the end of the weekend. So, like, by the end of the run of the show, like, she was like, yeah, this is the part where we get in a fight, and you're being, like, a little bitch to me. So.
Wait, I'm going to jump, because you mentioned your mum, and you talk about when you were doing Up in the Air, and you were, like, the woman. You've been nominated for an Oscar, and that, you started to speak to your mom kind of less and less. And, like, from your mom's perspective, she's like, hey, my daughter's too cool for me now.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? But, like, what was really going on?
Yeah, well, it was like, I just felt so overwhelmed and so much pressure, and I felt then so guilty for feeling bad for myself, because, like, it's not backbreaking work, and I should just be grateful, and then that made me feel even worse again. And so I knew that when I got on the phone with her, I'd be like, Mom, I don't understand what's going on. So I was just, like, avoiding her calls. And then the second that we talked, and I totally, like, had a little sloppy breakdown, she was like, oh, I see what's happening. Okay. So she was fine about it, but before we had that conversation. But it was really, like, I needed to, like, time the window, because I didn't have time to, like, have a breakdown. Oh, so I was like, it was like, I got back to LA after a flight, I think, and she called me, and I was like, this is perfect. I can cry now. So I had to, like, schedule crying time. Let's just pencil
Wait,
that
I
in,
hope you didn't still
crying.
have to do that.
Yeah. Meeting at 1, just crying in the bathroom at 2:30.
Oh my God, okay, so let's go back to New York. You're in this Broadway show, but you start to get anxiety, and there's a really amazing, well, it's not amazing that you had anxiety, but there is a part in the book where you talk about, having to go to your dad and saying, Dad, I don't think I can do tomorrow night's show.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't that it was tomorrow night's show, it was tonight's show.
Whoa.
That was why it was like, yeah, you can't do that. I mean, my dad got it, but, my dad went with me to talk to the stage manager, and, understandably, the stage manager was like, they have an understudy, but it's a lot easier for everybody if you have some advanced notice. So understandably, that their reaction was like, it'd be really cool if you did though. So, and I just felt like, oh, okay, I have to do it. And then I kind of scheduled like some time off later on, and it didn't really help me because it was like I needed to, yeah, and I needed to know that I had kind of agency. I needed to know that I could do it. It's like, when I'm in a crowd, sometimes I'll get anxious because I feel like I don't know how I would escape if I had to. Like, that sounds really weird, but like, not that I need to, but I need to know that I could. Yeah, I'm like, exit. So it was kind of a lesson for me about trying to like anticipate if something like that happened, and to know that if I really do need to do something, that like you have to kind of push back on people, or maybe let someone down in that situation for your own sake. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I really got out of the book is you talk about being nice. This idea of especially women, we feel we have to be nice all the time. And I'm wondering kind of when you decided that being nice wasn't your top priority, and what were the other things that became your top priority? And I don't want to keep yapping, but you did, you made this great point that when men are on, like, the people who are usually the most difficult, the addicts, this kind of people on set.
In my experience.
Yeah, like you said, 90% are men, and yet women are labeled difficult.
Yeah.
And I think that ties into, like, being nice and realizing, like, when you have to stick up for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a little bit along into doing movies and noticing that when guys would push back on things, or just have any kind of issues that would disturb the natural workflow, it was kind of like, well, they're artists, like if they're high all the time, it's like, well, they're an artist, and women don't. I've never worked with women that like make those kind of waves on a set, but anytime you question anything, it's like, here we go, and you're like, what? It feels like nice becomes, are you, like, have I noticed you today? Basically, like, if you do anything that feels like, yeah, I don't know, like you're pushing back or just kind of asserting yourself, it feels like you're going to get labeled difficult, and if you want to keep being thought of as a nice girl, you have to just agree to do whatever anybody asks of you, even if it starts to feel like you're really taking advantage of me here. You just have to say yes to everything, and so that was something that I had to just decide. Like, I just don't value that over other qualities. I think if you're passionate and funny and smart, that's so much cooler to me than somebody who just kind of agrees to everything and doesn't make waves. So that's thank you, one person. So that's something that I've tried to keep in mind when I feel like, oh, I really shouldn't say anything because they won't think I'm nice. I just don't.
I'm going to eradicate
that word
that from it all. I keep going back to your family because it feels like they're really amazing, grounding people. And back to high society, when you were, here in New York, there's a story in the book how your dad had to go to the producers and be like, we have to change something here.
Right.
And
basically, my dad and I moved here. We moved to Yonkers to do the show in Manhattan, and so he was a substitute teacher at the time, so he wasn't working while we were here, and I was supporting both of us and like renting an apartment, and on a salary where normally actors equity minimum you'd be living with 4 roommates. But I'm 12 years old, so I can't do that.
Doing 8 shows a week.
So my dad had to go to the producers. I didn't even know that this was going to happen, but we were passing one of the producers in this hallway, and the producer just benignly asked, "How are you doing?" And my dad was like, "Not good." And I'll tell you why. And basically said, like, when my daughter's grown up, she can make the decision to be a starving artist, and she can skip meals to pursue her dreams and stuff. But right now, I'm in charge, and that's not her decision. So we need to figure something else out. And basically, they ended up giving us like a per diem so that we could keep the lights on.
But I kind of love this idea of, you're always in a better negotiating place when you're willing to walk away.
Right.
And I love, like, he was willing to walk away. It wasn't what you wanted.
Right.
But
like, I would have stayed, but he was correct. And, he was absolutely doing the right thing to say, like, we're not going to start, she's not going to start making sacrifices at 12 years old to be doing this.
Yeah. I mean, has that advice have you had situations that you've had to be willing to walk away from?
Yeah. To
put yourself first, to kind of have that. There is a shift energetically that happens when you can walk into that room.
Yeah. There have been, I don't want to get specific, but there have been, there have definitely been things where I've had to go, yeah, if that's, what you need me to do, then I'm going to say no and thank you very much. And like the next week it comes back around and suddenly the conversation has changed. But it's tough, isn't it? It's like that bit in Swingers where you actually, thank you, 12 people, where like that's the rub. You actually have to be willing to walk away. You can't go, okay, like I really do want to do it, but like this negotiation's over, because they can smell it on you, So it's there, and there have also been times, by the way, where I have just been like, you know what, they called my bluff. Like, I do want to do it, and it's fine, and we're not going to get anywhere because they know that, like, they know where my head's at. So I just have to. There's no point in drawing this out for like 2 more weeks. Let's just say yes.
Okay, so when did you move to LA, and how did that coincide with you baking?
I moved to LA when I was like, I can't remember if I was 17 or 18. The timeline gets so fuzzy for me, but I moved to LA and like had to kind of develop a hobby because like I didn't know what to do with myself in between auditions, because it's hard to make friends when you're like 18 years old and you're not in college, and because I'm a degenerate. Go to school, kids. And I wasn't working, and I wasn't 21, so I couldn't I didn't know where, like, just hang out on the street corner. Because LA, we drive everywhere, so it's hard to meet people. So baking was a great way to get people to love me. I'm like a feeder.
What's the thing you bake that you can nail and will please anyone? Because you don't cook much, right?
No. But there's like some peanut butter oatmeal kind of squares. They're very like potluck kind of style, but they're very good. But they're mostly Crisco. But I don't tell people that.
The secret's out. Okay, so I'm going to jump around a bit. Another thing, you've said that you are like the mayor of Squaresville, but that you had to fight for that title. And so who did you fight with over this title, and how did it come up?
I was doing this movie with Lisa Kudrow, and she was talking about how she's a total square, and we got into a little argument about it because I feel like I want to do things like just to the letter and follow the rules, and like I love having a structure and guidelines and stuff so that, like a color inside the lines kind of gal. And we ended up kind of like trading anecdotes until I told her that the one time that I've ever snuck into a movie, it's like a friend bullied me into doing it. It was the first Ironman, and then I, like years later, I met Robert Downey Jr. and Jon Favreau, who directed the first Ironman, and I like gave them money because I felt so bad. But it was a relief. I feel
because it had been weighing on you for that long.
Cosmically, yeah.
Oh, you are a good girl. I love it. But so there's there was a point in your LA period, I think you're about 19, when you bought a book called A Guide to Getting It On.
Yes, it's an excellent book.
Do you still have it?
I do.
Could you share it?
My editor
guys.
didn't believe that this was real, and I had to like take a photo of it and send it to her.
I love it.
I still have it.
So you're 19.
Yeah.
Why did you buy this book? Like, why did you search it out? Do you remember the bookstore? Like, what happened?
Well, the title makes it pretty obvious why I brought the book. I just saw it in a thrift store and out of the closet in West Hollywood, and I was there are kids in the audience, but I was curious for some like theoretical knowledge. So and I felt that I was behind in the curriculum, so I like studied this book.
I don't know.
I'm like the kind of girl who thinks that she could learn karate from a book. Like
I should have asked about the age limit here, because you really go into things in the book that helped me so much. And we talked about it in the green room, and it feels so mean not to say that there's a quote that I have to read because it really struck me. And you said it to a boyfriend you had at the time. And it was 3 months ago, I was terrified as being outed as a virgin freak. Now I'd had sex with all but one person, and somehow I was getting slut-shamed. I don't know about most of the women in the audience, but I've definitely had a boyfriend that I have like wanted to have sex with and thought is so handsome and gorgeous, and at some point they've been like, it's kind of gross how you do that. And you talked about it, and I was like, oh my God, I remember that. And then I wondered, like, how did you kind of work through that?
I mean, it took me a little while, and I didn't have a boyfriend. That's a euphemism. But I didn't have another experience for like a year after that, because I was like, is that what's going to happen? Like, because we're all aware, like, culturally of the idea that, women are supposed to be, like, kind of sexually available or interesting, but then, like, if you do have sex with them, then it's like, oh, well, they got everything they wanted, and now they're, so I was aware of these dynamics, but I had never experienced it personally, and since that happened on my first experience, I was like, okay, so is it always going to be like that? Like, it's, you want something, and then when you have it, like, you're like, oh, good, I'm good, that's, actually, never mind. So I think it was just a matter of, like, starting to hang out with less shitty people. And, I don't know if it's because I've been making better choices of who I'm interacting with, or if it is just a product of getting a little bit older and, men and women maybe both getting over certain, standard issues. But I have had great experiences more recently, so
nice. Yes.
I get mine. So I don't know. Like, I still, and that guy and I are still friends, and like, we've kind of talked about it, but not entirely. Like, I think he got over that, but I think that was, we talk about toxic masculinity being something it's bad for women and it's bad for men too, and maybe that was just something that he thought he was supposed to want. He was supposed to want someone who, like, either was or at least could feign, like, sexual innocence or something. And maybe that's something that he just got over too. I think.
Well, it sounds like it. And the fact that you were able to talk to him about it, which I think is something when it happened to me, many years ago in that way, I didn't say anything. Right. I was just like, like, and shrivel, right?
Yeah.
And that I love that you almost gave a framework, of guys, this is what we can say to these men who aren't evil.
Yeah.
That maybe if we have a conversation about it, we can, like, work through it a bit.
I did write some awful poetry about it. That really helped.
They should be in the footnotes.
It's been carefully, like, acid bleached run over a truck, there's no computer hard drive that has evidence
Do
of
that.
it. I've been very careful. It's that bad.
So let's go back to when you were 16 and you were in this cult film, and you played this character.
Oh yeah.
Is it Fritzy?
Yeah.
So can you talk about what it was like as a 16-year-old girl? All you want to do is
I know,
be
and I
like-
had such a crush on one of the guys in the cast who was gay, but I didn't know it. I mean, it's a musical film. I don't know. I was 16, guys. I don't know what to say. Yeah, so Fritzy is just like all the other girls got to wear all these cute, like well-fitted clothes that were like colorful and like darling, and I was just in like the baggiest. I mean, look at me now. Like my tune has changed, but yeah, and they would run this like grease over my hair. And, you know, they wouldn't put any makeup on me and stuff. And I was like, I'm in a movie. And I'm going to be like the gross girl in the movie, like the smelly girl in the movie. So there was definitely like this level of like vanity and ego at that age that was just not conducive to like playing a really interesting character, like this great character that I would like die to play now, and I loved playing her at the time, but I was like, can't she also be cute? So it was, you know, it was nice to look back at that and know that I've gotten over that, and that it's kind of much more exciting to play more interesting characters. Like when I play a put together character, it's like, oh, for God's sakes, okay. So that was like. I felt really sorry for myself at the time, but in retrospect, it was awesome.
I mean, now when you get a script sent your way, and obviously they've come through all these channels already, so you're getting quality. How do you, like, what's your barometer of, like, what you love or what you're ready to do next?
Well, it has gone through a lot of channels, and sometimes, most of the time, it's still really bad. There are a lot of bad scripts in the world. So it's mainly when you find a good script. Like, I get asked that a lot, like, how do you decide what to do? And it's not that hard because there are so few good scripts, yeah.
Huh.
And the good ones, like, everybody fights over those, so.
Do you want to write one?
No.
Wait, you've written a book and you're so good at it already.
No. Well, I will also say, like, even really good scripts, reading screenplays is so boring because it's like dialogue and then like a description of a building for the next scene, and then we're inside that building. So there's none of that joy of like reading a novel and getting a real sense of the world. And it's it would be like if 80% of a novel was redacted and you had to read it, you would be like, this sucks. So the idea of writing one would be torturous.
No. Okay, I have a wild card question, and I just have to check because I know there's a time limit, so I have to like speed it up. In the book, you say that, I don't know if we're allowed to mention names, but like the Katie Holmes, Tom Cruise, like if someone, oh no, you didn't mention them in the book, so this is me.
I was like, what have I done? What have I done?
I'm responsible for my own words. But this idea of like, I'd love if someone wanted to pay me to be there.
Yeah.
Oh,
I see what you're saying. For Katie Holmes and Tom Cruise, allegedly, I have no idea. I'm saying the idea of like an arranged relationship, because people like talk about like, their publicists just like got them together and they're not really together. I would totally do that.
Wait, okay, so
I would. Are you kidding?
Let's go. Who would be? This is just a fun one. Who would be your top pick? Like if you could be the chooser. I think women should be the ones who are like, I want him as my play boyfriend.
Well, right, but I mean, I guess the point is it would be somebody that like you didn't care about or somebody. But if Tim Gunn ever needed a beard for any reason, I want to hang out with him all day, every day.
Okay.
Like I love that he's out and proud. But if there was any reason that he wanted to like, seem like he was, on the sexual spectrum, you let me know.
Let's put that out there.
Great.
It's done. Okay, so there was,
And by that I mean my boyfriend Tim Gunn is so great.
Oh my gosh, tomorrow's headlines will be like, Anna and her new man, the whole thing. Okay, I know because I don't have time. Okay, I loved it. Like, I'm imagining you and your friends in LA when you're racing to auditions. You lived with these two great guys. And you know how when we see on, like, the front of Variety or, you know what I mean. It says, like, Anna Kendrick was a revelation. And that you're waiting to get that.
Well, we played this game when we were.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, when we were. So I lived with these two guys, and you know, some other friends. We would sit around and play this game of, like, in movies, like, what would you want? And, like, one friend of mine always wanted the and, like, that in the credits, like, obviously, like, if you know, like, above title billing is, like, the highest credit you can get, but then there's something kind of sexy about, like, and Tim Gunn.
Why
I don't know why. He's
that?
the only name that's keeps popping into my head. And you know, like, he wanted the and my thing was, like, you know, whenever you see, like, Michelle Williams was a revelation, I was like, I want to be a revelation. And then for Up in the Air, so one of these friends texted me the line from, and Peter Travers too. It was from, like, Peter Travers Rolling Stone, which is, you know, an institution. So Peter Travers, Anna Kendrick is a revelation, and I was like, dreams come true. I hope somebody got that on video. You guys are so great.
So around that time in Up in the Air, you know, everything looks so fancy, right? From the outside, the perception of you and, you know, the Oscars. I was like, can you talk about stealing a toilet roll once? But
oh, yeah.
Can you? I have done it too, but that's not really, I have.
Oh, great. That makes me
I did
feel
that
less
at Cosmo.
alone.
I feel terrible.
You from the office at Cosmo?
Yes, because I was so broke.
Yeah.
No, I'll never be hired anywhere again. But can you talk a bit about when you performed at the Oscars and then, well, it was this kind of contrast, like you're there in this beautiful gown, then you get on a private jet, but also what is that contrast between
that happened more recently because Ben Affleck was involved. They didn't get me a private jet, let's be real. But that moment where I was, like, going to the Oscars for Up in the Air, you know, was a really confusing moment because I was still so broke that I was stealing toilet paper from, like, they would fly me to New York to do press and, like, put me in these nice hotels and stuff. And I, at one point, did ask, like, can I just, like, stay in a motel and you guys can, like, give me the difference? And that's how much I was like, but I'm broke. Like, how, this is so weird. And there was, like, this very awkward, like, that's really not how this works. Like I had just said something very gauche. And so then I was just like, oh, okay, I'm not going to ask why that is because I've already embarrassed myself. And so I, like, stole a roll of toilet paper from the hotel because I was...
Like, F you!
Yes, pinching pennies. And yeah, it was a very weird thing. And I also felt really guilty for, like, going out into the world and presenting, like, yes, everything's wonderful, and these diamonds are mine. And because I was like, well, this is bullshit. Like, I shouldn't even be, like, I felt like I was, like, complicit in like, participating in what is a very, very, like, you know, fake and glossy presentation of what your day-to-day life is. So, that's part of why I ended up, like, crying on the phone with my mom because I was like, I don't understand what's happening. But it definitely, it also made me realize, I think this is one of those lessons that we learn again, like, over and over in our lives, is that, like, there was always a sense for me that, like, adults were running the movie industry. And like, I mean, we're seeing that now a lot. Like, I think I always thought that was the case with every industry and with government, and that, like, there were adults behind the scenes and that, like, actually nobody knows what they're doing, because I was one of the adults and I was like, but I'm not. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Somebody, you know, like, when is an adult going to tell me how this is all supposed to work? And it kind of made me realize that, which also continually helps me realize, like, nobody knows better than me. Nobody knows better than you. You know, like, I feel like whenever my gut is telling me something isn't, like, the right decision, it always feels like I should, somebody will know the answer for sure, and actually nobody has the answers. So, just
I feel like
trust
this
yourself.
book really did that for me, and I think it will for everyone. It's like coming back to you, and that's what the point of this is, right? It's like you just have to remember that little scrappy girl.
Yeah.
You did mention government, so I'm going to go there because you're really...
oh, boy.
Are you going to run? No, I didn't even... Are you? No, that's not a legit question, unless you want it to be. No, but you have such a fabulous Twitter voice and Twitter presence. And in the book, you talk a lot about actually, when you send that kind of angry email to an ex-boyfriend, that you kind of actually like to sleep on it.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, like, how you manage those two impulses in the environment we're in now, like, with the platform you have.
Yeah. Well, I feel like this year and the year before has been a lot, for me personally anyway, has been kind of learning to listen and know that there are people who've been in the fight longer and have a lot at stake, and trying to know when to shut my mouth and actually just listen. So I think that is kind of a similar thing of just sleep on it, and because I feel like I will look on Twitter and see voices that are saying more succinctly and eloquently, the kind of jumbled thoughts in my head, and be like, right, I'm not actually adding something to the conversation right now, and now is kind of the point where I should be learning and listening.
And I love how you amplify other people's voices a lot in that same way. You're like, this is the right person to retweet, listen, watch this, look at this.
Yeah, I tend to retweet more than tweet, because there are people who, when I'm sitting there going, well, what they said. That's sort of what that feels like.
That's it. Guys, thank you so much. What a fun
was so
time.